Hello there, and welcome back to another episode. If you are new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning watcher, welcome back. I am so glad you're here. Today, we're going to be talking about what to do when your launch fails. So, the other day, I was watching some videos and I saw this designer come on and she was talking about, her most recent pattern launch. She was talking about how, this was her worst launch ever. She didn't make her goals and she was just like upset with herself and with her product. She was questioning herself as a designer. She was questioning her pattern. She was wondering, was it good enough? Was she good enough? Is she at the end of her design career, right? And I think a lot of us as designers, we have these questions as well. Whenever our launches don't do the numbers that we want, we tend to question our worth or value. Are we good enough? Why even bother? Should we continue? And you and I, we all have to make that decision for ourselves, right? But when I was watching her video, I didn't go and look at her pattern. I didn't go and look at her Instagram or social. I didn't go and look at any of that stuff. I just wanted to look at her and how she was speaking about her pattern and focus in on what she said she did and didn't do. So she was talking about, she didn't send enough emails, she didn't post enough, she didn't do a lot of things. And yes, after a launch, we really need to sit down and do a post-mortem on what our launch did. We need to sit down and look at our numbers. We need to sit down and look at what we did and didn't do. But I don't want us to just be constantly being critical and beating ourselves up about what we didn't do and did do and what we should have done better or any of that stuff. Because my philosophy is that the launch is not the end. Just because your pattern didn't do well during that period, that launch period, maybe your launch period is 2 weeks, a month, whatever. Just because your pattern didn't sell well during that period, that doesn't mean it's the end. You still have infinite more times to generate revenue from that pattern. So while, you can beat yourself up and say, I didn't send enough email, I didn't post enough, I didn't do it. Okay, well, going forward, what can you do? Can you create another launch plan for like the next month and reach out to your audience and do all the things you want to do, right? I want to say this kindly, but I'm just sick of folks complaining about what didn't happen as if that's the end. Like they can't do the things that they say they wish they had done. Like they can't do that now, okay? So that's my philosophy. Just because that launch period that you set up is over, you can still launch that pattern. You can still sell that pattern. You can still do all the things you want to do. You didn't send enough emails? Okay, you can start sending emails now. You didn't post enough on your social? You can post now on your social, right? That pattern does not have to be brand spanking new to be worthy of a launch, okay? And we don't have to call it a launch. I call these a post launch, which means that, I'm taking everything I wish I could have done, wanted to do, and I'm reaching out to my audience again to talk about that thing, right? And in my book, Pattern Launch Plan, we talk about the post-launch, which is an infinitely longer period than just a launch. And you have so many opportunities to generate real revenue from that pattern beyond the launch. So then she was talking about maybe it was the pattern. The pattern wasn't good enough. It was too simple. It was just like, it was too difficult. It was too whatever. She was just like, maybe the problem why folks didn't buy was the pattern. Okay. So my recommendation for that is to create a pre-sale. A pre-sale will tell you if there's interest in that pattern, even before you're finished making that pattern. a pre-sale will not only get people onto your waiting list and say, and have them put up their hand and say, yes, I want this thing when it's ready, but they're putting down money, which is even more of a commitment that they want this pattern when it's finished. And now you have that incentive to say, hey, 100, 200 people said they want this pattern. I know this is going to do well. And if those early adopters want this pattern without seeing everything about the pattern, imagine those later adopters who need to see testimonials, need to see samples, need to see it in different colors, need to see it in different sizes. How much more they will want it. So if you're worried about, is my pattern good enough? Will people like it? You don't have to worry about if. You can go out and you don't have to worry about if. You can get concrete evidence if this pattern is what your audience wants. And you do that by creating a pre-sale. And I walk you through every step of the way inside my program, Pattern Partnership. Because a pre-sale is not just to generate money, but it's to build buzz, get interest, and let your audience know this is coming, and also to reassure you, the designer, that folks actually want this. So if you're like, I don't know if this is the pattern my audience will want, you don't know if they'll rock with this pattern because it's out of your wheelhouse and it's totally different than anything you've ever done, create a pre-sale. Get folks committed concretely before you even finish a pattern. Okay? What else? Then she was wondering if it was the economy that was causing folks to not buy. Maybe it was due to the election. People are just kind of like at a standstill because you're like, I don't know what's going to happen with the elections in the US. I don't know what's going to happen with my money. I don't want to spend money on things that are not essential right now. Maybe they're still struggling from having a bad economy and inflation and pricing and all that stuff, right? So that is a valid question, right? I personally probably, I don't know, I launch all the time, regardless of the time period. But if you are worried about certain things, or let me put it this way, if you wouldn't buy a pattern for a particular reason, right? There's a lot of uncertainties with the election. You don't know where things are going to come from. You don't know where your money's going to, you're just uncertain. And you wouldn't personally buy patterns, maybe don't launch yet. Or maybe focus on talking to your audience in a way that really speak to that pattern and why, even though it's an investment, why should they invest right now even though they might be struggling with something? For example, for me, if I was this designer, and my audience are just like, I'm tired of the elections, I'm burnt out, I don't know where my money's coming from, I would shift the conversation around, okay, well, this pattern is going to help you with your mental health while you're struggling with who's going to be the next president of the US, right? You can shift that conversation around, like, speak to what they're struggling with. But you really have to understand your audience to really be able to do this. And I think that might be part of her problem, is that she didn't understand her ideal audience. So she was just trying to sell the pattern as a pattern without really thinking about the result that her audience will actually get. And for a lot of designers, myself included in my before days, I used to just sell the pattern. It's like, oh, it's a pretty scarf. It's a pretty this. It's socks, right? But now I think about it differently because I have in my mind's eye who my ideal audience is, and I understand how she's struggling with certain things because of where she is in her life. So when I craft my marketing, when I craft my messaging, I'm talking to her. Yes, it will apply to other people. Like, other people can make this pattern. But ideally, I want to have this conversation with that one person who is my ideal audience and speak directly to why you should get this pattern right now instead of waiting. And even if they have like money issues, a lot of folks have money issues and they still go out and buy a brand new iPhone. So why wouldn't they buy a $5 pattern? It's the messaging. It's understanding how this pattern will fit into their lives, and they don't see that. And as a designer, as the seller, it is your job to let your audience understand what's in it for them right now, right? Yeah, they can go buy it 6 months down the road. They can go buy it whenever. But why should they buy it right now, right? If it's because of the election, yeah, you want to get this pattern now so you can work your stress through this period using my pattern. See how that works? Okay. All right. Let's see. Some of the other points that came up was that maybe she wasn't putting it in front of enough people, and that goes back to not posting enough. Okay, you didn't put it in front of enough people during your launch. Why can't you do it now? Right? If your launch flopped, and I never like to say, launches fail because you have opportunities to continue to market that pattern. If that's a mindset you have, then create another launch plan, another launch period. If your launch ended like 3 weeks ago and you're just like, okay, now what? Create another launch plan for that pattern. Do all the things that you said you wanted to do. Add some testimonial, add some case studies, add some details, show off people who have made it in different colors. You can do so much more. And this is why your post-launch is so valuable, because it's you continuing to talk about this thing and generating revenue well after your launch ends. And I hate when folks are like, oh, my launch ends, so now I'm going to go make another pattern. Girl, that pattern is going to cost you more money to make. You're going to have to buy supplies, take time, edit photos, do all this stuff. So now your profit margins are down because that new pattern, whatever money you make, you got to take off for creating that pattern. All that revenue is going to be diminished by paying to put out that pattern. But if you keep launching that pattern that you've already invested in, now it's all profit. Yeah, maybe you need to pay to run some ads or pay to do some other stuff. But right now, that pattern right there is just sitting there collecting virtual dust. So go talk more about it. Go re-release it. Go relaunch it. Go talk about it in the way that you said that you didn't do. Instead of constantly putting out new patterns that really you're not passionate about. You are just crunched for time. And you don't even know if that new pattern is going to do the numbers that you want. Because again, you're not creating a pre-sale. You're not doing anything to really invest in that pattern before you even create it. You've already invested in this pattern that you said didn't do so well. So go ahead and launch it again. Switch up the messaging, right? Do some case studies. Do some polls on social media. Ask questions. See why folks maybe didn't buy. Okay? Do all the things that you say you wish you had done during the launch. You could do those right now. Okay? And one of the things that I used to talk about a lot, and I probably should bring this back, but when I see designers or yarn dyers or yarn stores launching a new thing, they don't put it on their feed on Instagram. They put it in their stories. The stories that disappear after 24 hours. And I have some concern about that. Because while you can add links to your stories and people can click through and go to the thing, I think that not having it in your feed and having that longevity, you're missing out on that real connection with your audience, their connection with that thing you're making. If it's only in your stories, it feels very like, is this even a real thing? Is this even going to be around? And that's what I feel like when I see a designer who doesn't talk about like the new pattern or the launch in their feed, but they only talk about the stuff in their stories. And I'm like, do you even like this pattern? Because you're not making real investments into making it permanent. So are you putting work out there in a way where your audience will actually see it? Because a lot of folks aren't going on social media as much as you want them to. It's not like the good old days when folks were just like on social media and clicking through photos and buying. Those days are over. Let's stop trying to bring those back. The social media has changed and we need to change with it. So when we're thinking about how we're going to market, we need to think differently. Okay? What worked in 2008, 2009 will not work in 2024. Our audiences are getting more sophisticated. They are reading between the lines. They are smart and savvy buyers, and we don't want to trick them or underestimate them or just show them one pretty photo. They want to see all angles of the thing you're selling. They want to see who's behind the thing. They want to know that you are real. And this isn't something I wanted to touch on, but I've been going on Instagram and looking up patterns and stuff like that, and the amount of AI stuff I'm seeing that links to like Etsy and other sites, that you look at it and it's like, no way that pattern is real. No way you're going to be able to achieve that thing, because some of those stitches don't even look like they're real, like they don't exist. Like what are you trying to have me do here? So when we're thinking about marketing, it's not just about showing the pretty things. People now need to know that there's a real person behind it and that this pattern will actually work. It's not just some AI pretty photo that's up there that's like, I don't know, it might work, and you spend your money. And now these people got burned. Right? Users and buyers are looking for that connection between who the designer is and what they're getting. They want to know you are real. So if you only show up only to sell in Instagram or in your email, and now you're complaining that no one's buying, well, you can't really blame folks for not really knowing who you are and that you even exist or what you're even about. So when we're thinking about, yeah, my pattern flopped, the launch didn't go well. Well, I have a video that talks about 4 steps that you can take, that you can watch right now, that talks about 4 steps that you can take to make sure that your pattern actually makes sales. And it's not easy. It's not for everybody. A lot of people are going to watch that video and be like, that's too much, I'm not doing that. And then they're going to go back to just posting photos and hoping people buy. And yeah, people might buy 1 or 2, but if you want to do this full time, if you want a successful career as a designer, you can't just hope. You can't just sit there and cross your fingers and launch and hope that you will make sales. There are things you need to do to go out there and attract the people who want what you have to offer. You need to be able to articulate the transformation that people are going to get when they buy your pattern. It's not just a pattern, right? My sweater will make you feel amazing, confident, like you matter, you're seen. What does your pattern do for your audience? If you don't know, you really need to figure out who your ideal audience is and what they need from you. Why are they buying that pattern? What are they going to get after they've completed the pattern? Okay? And if you've sold pattern in that video I just talked about, where we're talking about the 4 steps to making more pattern sales, one of the steps is repeat customers. So if you have sold 1 or 2 patterns in the past and those folks aren't buying again, are you reaching out? I don't mean to spam people. Do not spam folks. But you should have a process set up where you can actually reach out to those folks on a consistent basis. And that could be them signing up for your email letter where you're giving them an incentive to sign up, which is a lead magnet. Again, I talk about that more in the other video. So if you are just like, my launch didn't do so well, if I can support you further one-on-one, I know all our situations are very different, and that's why I try not to create a one plan fit all, because one plan don't fit all, just like one sweater doesn't fit all. But we can create a sales plan, a marketing strategy that works specifically for you and where you're at, based on how long you've been in business, how many patterns you have out there, and how much time you have to dedicate. Because if you're a busy mom with 5 kids, you will not have as much time as a single person with no kids who does this full time, right? So we need to figure out where you're at, what your capacity is, and figure out a plan to work for you. So if that's something I can help you with, please comment below and let me know. I would love to work with you. For other things I've talked about, there will be links below. Thank you again for being here. My name again is Tian Connaughton of tianconaughton.com. I cannot wait to see all that you do. Your launch did not fail. You have so many more opportunities to generate revenue from that pattern. So go out there and do it. Bye for now.